Good to go. Okay. Okay, right. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight at our Festive Tech Calendar session, where we're going to be going through the Autopilot AMA. It's great to have you, and obviously there's a number of questions that have been submitted, which is great. So appreciate that. We've got two kind of legends really on our panel tonight. We've got Michael Niehaus and Rudy Ooms who are here to answer questions. We will be going through some of the autopilot and autopilot troubleshooting questions. We're going to prioritize that, but please put your questions into the chat, and the team here will pick up on them as we go along. Before we do that, before we kick off, there are a few just kind of general rules, and just want to link it to this festive calendar really, because it's all about a charity event. So I'll hand it over to Dean to go through that.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, so this is, as you can see at the top left there, is the Festive Tech Calendar. We're proudly taking part in that for today's Festive Tech. And we have firstly some code of conduct just for you to take a look at and try to advance the slide. Apologies for the wall of text, but just the number of people joining this, it would be really useful to make sure we all respect the diversity of everyone in the community. Keep discussions on topic. This is specifically focused on Windows Autopilot troubleshooting, so please try not to go too far off topic if you do ask a question in chat or on voice. Obviously, no spamming. We can't really. We're a small team. Please respect that. Also, be respectful of other people's time. If you have a question, try and make it as concise as possible, or maybe put it in chat and try and paraphrase it. We will not accept harassing or offensive behavior at all. No offensive language. This is being streamed live to 2 YouTube channels, and it's a lot of people on this call as well. So please be respectful of that. Do not share any confidential information. That's obvious. Do not do that. And also follow our instructions. If we ask you to stop doing something or to go on mute, please do that just to make sure everyone has a good time. So, as Andy mentioned, this is the Festive Tech Calendar. They are fundraising for a really special charity called Missing People, and they essentially help find vulnerable and missing people. Please donate. The link at the bottom there is obviously it's right there, but it's in the meetup, and it's also on the YouTube page. Please take a look at that if you get time. We wouldn't be in a Teams call if we didn't have an agenda. So first, the panel will go through some questions that have already been sent, and we've had time to prepare for those. So we have some good answers and good discussion to be had on those. Then we will open the floor to any questions from the audience. Please come off mute if you want to ask a question. You can put it in chat and we'll try and get to it, but if you come off mute, then you'll definitely get your question asked. The session will last a maximum of 1 hour, keeping these slides really, really short. We will need to stop after 1 hour. And then finally, after that hour, we invite everyone to join the quiz. I say everyone, including the panelists and the CMC team, because no one has had input into this quiz apart from you, Lexi. Sorry, you can't join. The rest of the team will be welcome to join. And the winner will receive a £50 Amazon gift voucher. And we also donate £50 to missing people. So, I think that's it. Andy, back to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, as Dean mentioned, please put your questions in the chat. We're really keen to kind of pick up on those. We'll go through the pre-registered questions first and work through those, but obviously we'll want it to be as interactive as possible. If I do call out your name and you're on the list here for these questions you submitted, by all means come off mute and raise the question yourself. It's always good to get your first-hand view of those to make sure we represent it properly. So we'll kick off then. The first question I've got is from Mehmet Erdogan, and he says, is it possible to use offline domain join with an on-prem AD? So Rudy or Michael, do you want to pick up on that one first? Which one?
I'll let Rudy start.
Let me get the question. That was question
2. Question
Number
2.
two.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. It depends, but looking at the question, he's asking if it's possible to perform an offline domain join with an on-premise ID. When I'm reading the question, I assume he's talking about installing the InTune connector to make sure the device will receive the offline domain join blob, to make sure the device will be domain joined during the Autopilot enrollment. If he's talking about that, but
and generally hybrid Azure AD join is offline domain join. So
yeah,
you might read through the documentation and see it talk about hybrid Azure AD join all over the place, but that is joining to AD via offline domain join process.
Okay.
but that's only, of course, the domain join. I assume after he joined the device with the hybrid Autopilot enrollment, he still needs to have a line of sight to the domain controller to receive the policies.
And for the user to sign in. So
yeah,
there is that small requirement, which sadly you can't do via direct access because the InTune connector doesn't provide a way to enable direct access. So you have to deploy either an always-on VPN or some other connector, VPN client that can make a connection prior to the user logging in. Most of them can do that, whether it's called start before logon or some other term. It just depends on the VPN client, but generally they all can do that if you configure them.
Okay, great. I see that Mehmet, you're on the call here. Was it anything you wanted to add to that? Is that answer your question? You want to come off mute? No, that's okay.
Nope.
That's fine. Okay, so we'll move on. Thanks very much. On the second question is actually another question by Mehmet, and the question is on Autopilot troubleshooting and says, what should I do for rebuilding a computer with Autopilot? Is the first Autopilot object, or I think that should say, should the first Autopilot object be deleted?
I guess we can both answer them, me and Michael, but
yeah.
Looking at the question again, he's asking about the Autopilot object. I'm not sure, but I guess he's referring to the InTune object when using Autopilot pre-provisioning or self-deploying. The requirement to make sure you delete the InTune object first before rerunning the Autopilot pre-provisioning. But I'm not sure, but that I would guess he is referring to the InTune object, so that needs to be deleted when you run an Autopilot pre-provision.
Yeah, there's 3 objects for every device potentially. There's the Azure AD object, which is used for targeting, the InTune object, which InTune uses just to track the machine, and the Autopilot entry, which is the device registration. There should never be a need to deregister the Autopilot device, so you don't need to touch that one. The InTune one may need to be removed for certain circumstances.
Depends on the hardware supplier.
The AAD one, if you're targeting things correctly, you should never have to delete that one. But it does get a little tricky in hybrid Azure AD join because you'll end up with 2 devices, one that gets created when the device is registered, and then a second one that gets synced from AD later. So if you target just the AAD one, and then you redeploy the device after that second device object shows up, your targeting won't work anymore. So you have to make sure that you've targeted in a way that would make sure that it gets both of those machine objects. Generally, if you get that wrong, like if you targeted the domain join profile to a group that only contains AAD objects, the initial ones, then the second time you try to deploy that machine, it'll fail because it doesn't have a domain join profile targeted to it. The simple troubleshooting step in that case is if you get a failure like that, just target your domain profile to all devices. If the problem goes away, then you had a targeting issue initially. there's no harm in deploying a domain join profile to all devices. It only affects the Autopilot hybrid Azure AD join scenario. So it is a good troubleshooting step, but it's those sorts of things that you try to enable early in the process, not once you've gone into production, hopefully.
Okay. Okay, thanks, guys. There's no more to add. I'll move on to our next question. It's actually question 4, which is quite a long question. I don't know if you guys want to paraphrase this and go through it. Is Simon on this call, actually? Let me see if Simon's on the call. Simon, you raised a question on Autopilot troubleshooting around deploying Autopilot to your fleet of 12,000 devices and 10% of them fail. Are you on the call at all?
Yeah, I'd say the basic summary is that there are things failing during the ESP process, and as a result, users
It's Autopilot fails.
Yeah, you can't log onto the device, or yeah, that's the part that's not obvious. But if you've configured Autopilot to wait on apps and one of those apps fails, you're going to get an error message. You can configure it to say continue on error, but it sounds like you've already done that. But I think the bigger question is, well, what do you do about apps that are randomly failing during the install process?
That's a hard one, because it can be store apps, it can be the Office CSP app, it can be Win2Net apps, it can be a lot of apps.
Yeah, and if it's not a critical app, you don't have
add it.
to block on it. Yeah, keep it out of the list of apps that the ESP is monitoring, and only monitor the critical ones.
Keep it small and tidy.
Okay. Right.
But it also depends on if he's talking about the device phase in the ESP or the account phase in the ESP, of course, because skipping the account step phase could be done, of course, and in a hybrid environment is maybe the best choice you have. But I assume he already tried that, but because he's talking about the skip user status page. So that's why I'm wondering about what kind of apps he's talking about. But
and I've seen a fair number of customers that use device ESP to track critical security software, VPN clients, that kind of stuff, and nothing else. Maybe Office thrown in there as well.
Maybe
the device without Office might not be useful, but for anything else, you can just let it install in the background. If it fails, InTune will eventually try it again. So the apps will get there. They just don't need to block waiting for those apps.
Always make sure the user knows his way to find the company portal, to open the company portal and install the apps she wants on their own.
Mm-hmm.
As they are not required in the ESP.
Okay, thanks, guys. Is there any anyone from the CMC team? Is there any kind of replies on the chat that we want to pick up on? I will. I'll come back to you after this next question if I can. So the next question is from Vishal, and the question is how to modify group tag of a device that belongs to a different business unit that's brought into Autopilot service using convert all targeted devices to Autopilot. This is question 5.
Yeah, when the device is registered by InTune automatically, it won't have a group tag associated with it at all. So the only good approach that you would have is to periodically scan all the devices, which you can do via Graph API. So run a PowerShell script that looks for all devices that aren't tagged and applies a tag to them. The tricky part is, well, what tag do you apply to it? If you've only got one, then it's easy. But if you've got multiple, that gets tricky. I don't know how you would decide which tag to apply. The other thing to keep in mind is tags are basically a way of getting devices into groups. So you create a group tag, and then you create a dynamic group that says, give me all the devices that have this group tag. If you're going to be doing any sort of scripting, don't even bother with the group tag. Just drop the device directly into the group that you want it to be in as just a direct member of that AAD group. Then you don't have to worry about tags at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything you wanted to add to that at all, Rudy?
I guess Michael explained it very well. Just make sure you script it, automate it, and keep checking those groups. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I've got a Windows Autopilot InTune module on the PowerShell gallery that would make that a fairly simple exercise to get all the devices and go through them. It's still not part of the default InTune module because the Autopilot objects aren't considered production. They're still beta. So as a result of that, they don't show up in the official module, but this one works.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Michael. Dean, is there some updates on the chat that we want to introduce?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's the question you've asked at the start, the very first one. Thank you for that. We will be answering that very general question at the end, I hope, or we'll make time for that definitely. But the next question was from Ryan, which is an awesome question, I think, personally. So the question is the architecture of the future the one where we utilize AD for server and core infrastructure, and workstations would only be Azure AD joined? Where does Active Directory belong in the future?
Certainly, Microsoft wants everything to go to AAD for workspace.
That's for sure.
Yeah. For servers, it's a little more kind of up in the air. It wouldn't surprise me if everything moved to AAD at some point and AAD disappeared completely, but we're probably talking within our lifetimes, not something that's going to happen tomorrow.
Okay, and then one more from the chat, I think. Vincent, can Autopilot be used in conjunction with the Windows config tool or provisioning package?
So config tool, are you talking about config manager or?
No, I think it's, I would read that as the Windows config designer. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Can it be done? Probably.
Yeah.
Should it be done? Probably not a good idea. Because if you think about what a provisioning package is, it's a bundle of MDM policies and basically one command line that you can execute against a set of content. So generally you could have one or more apps in a provisioning package with a script that goes through and installs them. But the problem with that is you inject that provisioning package and it's a fairly static thing. So it makes it more difficult to change things via InTune or an MDM service. Plus the MDM service can already do everything that that provisioning package does. So why put it in a provisioning package? I mean, most of the time, the only real advantage to the provisioning package is you're caching the content on the client so that it doesn't need to be downloaded from the cloud. I wish that was something that InTune could do more natively. If you looked at, gosh, I'm drawing a blank, VMware Workspace ONE, they have the ability to basically populate the cache on the device using a provisioning package before an autopilot process to make sure that all the content you need to install the apps is already local. So there are some advantages like that, but the PPKG in that case is just a convenient way of running a command line that has some content associated with it to make some simple modifications to the device. But outside of a scenario like that, I would avoid provisioning packages and just stick to native Intune stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Ryan, you have your hand up.
Yes, I have a follow-up question to the answer. So if the scale at which point we're going to know the future of our server and core infrastructure is our lifetime, it leads to me to ask, on the side of the workstations, if we know the direction that we want to go there, how mature is Autopilot? You've been given a company that's relatively brand new. You know it's going to be 300 employees, and you have a clean slate and you're about to build. Do you begin using Autopilot right away, or should we still use legacy tools in the interim until Autopilot is more mature?
From my perspective, there's 3 layers to that. Identity, so AAD versus AD. Management, which is Intune versus GPO plus SCCM. And then the deployment mechanism, Autopilot or not. All of those potentially can be considered, but I haven't seen a greenfield company say, oh yeah, I want to stand up a bunch of infrastructure. Why would I install a server on-prem to support Active Directory? Why would I set up a new SCCM infrastructure? Why would I just not sign up for the needed cloud services to do this? So I think the natural approach would be AAD plus Intune plus Autopilot, where Autopilot is just used for that initial device provisioning. Intune does the ongoing management and configuration of the device, and AAD manages the identity.
Thank you. Andy,
Thank you.
back to the questions.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
For the questions.
So I'm going to jump to number 6 on our list that came in from Matthias. Now, I noticed there's a couple of Matthiases on the call here. I'm not quite sure. This one, so if I try and summarize, it's around pre-provisioning and Wi-Fi drivers. Don't know if you remember, if you're on the call, Matthias, and you remember that one?
Yes, I'm here. Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's good to come from you. So I don't know if you want to ask that question, if you can remember it. If not, I can read it out.
Well, please just read it out.
Okay. So basically, this is around you providing pre-provisioned laptops to your end users, and your most critical and missing Wi-Fi drivers. And this is about connecting to the LAN and not only Wi-Fi. What would be the best solution to add drivers during pre-provisioning without having too much of an administrative overhead? And you reference in there Michael's one of Michael's scripts.
Yeah, and I have a question that goes into that one. It sounds like you're imaging the devices yourself, because a device that ships from an OEM with missing Wi-Fi drivers would be something to complain to the OEM about. That would be bad. So my guess is that you're taking a generic Windows image and loading it onto the device before starting the pre-provisioning process.
Yeah,
right?
it's basically a long story, but currently we receive Lenovo devices with a broken build of Windows 21H1 19.043.1202, which is bugged with Autopilot. So it just doesn't work. So the alternative is either to patch the operating system in order to enroll it, which takes time, of course, or simply just reinstall it. But then again, the drivers will be gone. So in order to ensure that as many scenarios are within scope, so we take care of it, we would like to ensure that both the operating system and drivers are being deployed during pre-provisioning.
Yeah, so are you using MDT or SCCM or?
Yeah, we're using SCCM, we're using USB keys, and we're using the OEM images, basically, those 3 things.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think there's any great option other than just making sure that you add those Wi-Fi drivers into whatever process you're using to image the machine. In theory, you can get them from Windows Update and the Windows Update type scripts that I've published and other people have published could pull them from Windows Update as long as you have a functioning Ethernet connection, but it's not going to be 100%. There could still be some drivers that are missing. But fortunately, there aren't that many different types of Wi-Fi adapters out there. So generally, you could have a common set of Wi-Fi adapters that you just deploy to every machine as part of that re-imaging process, and hope that you deploy the right one to hit the ones that are missing.
Yeah, I would definitely hope that we in the future can remove that administrative overhead as I see it, because new drivers will be available, new Wi-Fi cards will be, published and so on. So using Windows Update would be a potential solution, even though it takes additional time to enroll devices. But automating it is key.
Yeah, there's been discussions on having that type of generic recovery image where all the drivers could be pulled from Windows Update. And the Windows setup team has worked on that kind of in bits and pieces over a period of years, but I don't think it's 100% there yet. A lot of that comes down to just the cooperation of the OEMs to make sure that all the drivers are actually on Windows Update. But if we can get to that point, then something like that's certainly doable.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Rudy, is there anything you wanted to add, or?
Yeah, it's a funny story, but today I had kind of a similar question on Reddit, if I'm not mistaken, or on Discord, one of the two. And he was using the Windows Recovery Engine to inject those drivers into the OS with the Win2net package to make sure the drivers are always on the device when enrolling it. But just as Michael told, if you're using MDT or an ISO or however you deploy the drivers, there are multiple options, of course.
It might have been the same dude, by the way.
Oh.
Okay. That's funny. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Next question, and it says, not sure if I'm pronouncing this. Piotr is the person that's raised it. It's number 5 again, but it's how to efficiently apply Windows Defender application control during pre-provision.
The challenge with that one is it will reboot the computer. And it's one of those weird cases where even the InTune documentation says use a custom only URI policy.
That really says it.
Is that because the custom only URI is the only one that supports the application control CSP for now?
I don't remember the details. The article explains it, but
I think
it's like two different generations of policies.
Yeah.
The AppLocker CSP requires a reboot.
Yeah, and the application control has an optional reboot. You can set the flag to not require it. I guess if you're using the latest one, then all good. But that requires the custom URI.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dean. Okay, so let's move on to a question which is number 7 from Sahel. And so Sahel asks, we have Windows 10 and 11 laptops enrolled to InTune using Autopilot. If the entry is deleted from InTune, we have to reset the laptop, install CleanOS, and go through the Autopilot process again. Is there any way that we can rejoin without having to reset the laptop?
I'm curious about why the InTune object was deleted. Because
by mistake, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. But as long as the device is HRD joined, you can re-enroll it into InTune. So it's not 100% necessary to wipe the device, re-enroll it with Autopilot. it's the same as you've got an expired MDM certificate or your MDM certificate is gone. You can re-enroll it. You can re-enroll it into InTune. You can get the certificate back to the device and get the trust back, so everything is working again. So wiping the device because the InTune object got deleted, it can be an option, but I would rather use the device enroller to enroll it back in InTune.
Okay.
Yeah, it generally sounds like one of those,
Oopsies.
I broke it, how do I
Yeah.
fix it? Well,
Yeah.
don't break it in the first place.
Yeah, that was how I kind of read that, I guess, myself.
I kind of deleted the InTune device for my boss, and what to do now?
I mean, I think it's probably worse if that's a process. If the process is for the support desk to delete the InTune device when someone leaves, stop doing that.
That's not good.
Yeah. Fine as part of a reset, but otherwise leave the objects alone.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll jump to one more, and then if Dean or any of you guys got any more on the chat you want to raise, I'll come to you. So the next one is question 8 from Eric. I'll just see if see any Eric on the call here. I don't see you on. So I have a question about redeploying an Autopilot device to another user. When receive a device to be redeployed, we're required to erase the hard drive and re-image the laptop before redeploying. Do I just need to delete the device from InTune, assign another user within Autopilot, and leave the Azure AD device entry? Thanks.
I wonder if Eric and Sahil work together.
Yeah, support. They seem maybe support related type questions in a way.
Rudy, what's the best way to redeploy a device?
Yeah, when looking at the question is we are required to erase the hard disk and re-image the laptop before redeploying. Yeah, but I always ask myself, why is it necessary to erase the hard disk before redeployment? Because in a normal situation, when issuing a wipe to the device, it should be wiped and should be ready for the next user. So I'm not sure why he needs to re-image the device before redeployment. I would rather choose to wipe the device and let it enroll back into Outlet without any issue. As long as the Windows.alt folder is gone, but...
Yeah, the only reason I've ever seen that I considered legitimate was top secret devices where there was the risk of someone recovering data from the hard drive. But that's really rare. And I suspect the way that the hard drive is being erased and re-imaged isn't really improving on that situation. It's just reformatting the drive, applying a new image over the top of it. So it will incidentally overwrite some data, but there's probably still recoverable data on the drive. So it's not accomplishing anything beyond what a reset would do.
The best way is to pull out the hard disk and pull it off, put in a new one if you want to be safe.
Yeah.
But again, why?
Yeah, it's generally government paranoia.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Let's move on to question 9.
Some chat.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Like, yeah. So Ben is just curious about the answer to question 4 that you gave, Michael, where you said you could have it continue on error, and that was Simon's question around the ESP. He deploys an Autopilot to 12,000 devices and 10% fail. Do you remember that question? Question 4.
Right.
And your response was that you can configure it to continue on error. Ben's question is, were you referring to the app or Autopilot ESP?
You can configure ESP to it's still going to display the error, but the user can click to continue and it will go ahead to the desktop. If you don't have that enabled, the device is effectively bricked and needs to be reset. But if you enable that, they can just say, yeah, keep going.
Cool. Hopefully that helps, Ben. Are you able to come off chat with any follow-up?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yep, can you hear me? Yeah, all right. That makes sense. No, I was just curious if there was a way to, ignore the error and continue without letting them know and then retry afterwards, but it doesn't sound like it. Other than modifying the app itself to,
make sure it doesn't break.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Next question from Johannes. Mainly because it's got so many upvotes. Are there any recommendations on making self-deploy or pre-provision as reliable as possible?
As reliable as possible. It depends on what he's talking about. If he's talking about the TPM part and the attestation part.
Johannes, you
That's
are not
hard
shy. Do you want to come off mute? No. Okay. Any comments there, Michael, before we move off?
Without knowing what type of unreliable behaviors you're running into, yeah,
that's hard to answer the
only
question.
Two types of issues that I've seen are application install failures, in which case generally it's make the app better, and TPM issues, which shouldn't be as big of a problem with new machines. It generally is a problem with older devices being reused.
Or AMD ones.
Yeah, brand new devices that throw in new TPMs that Windows has never heard of.
That's kind of fun.
Each device needs to be added to an allow list in the backend services. So until that's done, TPM attestation always fails.
Wow. Okay. Andy, I think we'll prioritize the questions from the form. So go ahead.
Okay. So the next one we've got from Mark T. Mark, I don't know if you're on the call. If you, by all means, come off mute if you are. But this is around about having issues with Autopilot Reset, failing installing MS365 apps. This is question 9, guys. If you can see that one.
I've tested the Autopilot Reset multiple times today because I was curious if it was indeed breaking suddenly with the Microsoft 365 apps, but I couldn't find it being torn apart. But maybe it also depends, of course, which channel he's using in the MS365 apps, if there are CDN issues with those at the time. So it's hard for me to blame the Autopilot Reset for failing the MS365 apps. Because our Autopilot Reset also removes program files, also removes the Windows folder. I've created a whole blog on what steps that reset or wipe should take. But when the Autopilot Reset is running, the program files is removed, the Windows folder is removed. So when you are back to the ESP screen, Office will get reinstalled. And why it fails you at that time, it's hard for me to tell without looking at the logs, I guess.
Yeah, and I just can't think of any great reason why it would fail after a reset versus on a new computer deployment.
Yeah. On an existing device.
Just noticing in one case and not the other, or is it something specific to the wipe? That part's not clear. I do have the general question around wipe versus autopilot, or a full reset versus an autopilot reset. Personally, I always do full resets. I don't find the autopilot reset to be particularly useful.
Nope, me neither.
So,
when you when you say useful, Margaret, do you mean just it's caused that issues or errors for you? It's inconsistent. Is that what you mean?
Well, I can't say that I do it enough to be able to speak to the reliability, but the difference in behavior between an autopilot reset and a normal reset is mostly inconsequential, especially if you're using OneDrive to sync data.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Okay.
a full wipe or full reset is generally more
Reliable.
flexible and reliable. Yeah. It's just getting the device back to a clean state and ready to be used in any way that you might throw at it. Whereas an autopilot reset is assuming that you're going to use it in a particular way where you actually want to retain certain things.
Okay.
And in the chat, they were asking if the reset options retain drivers. I think they all retain drivers, so you're always good in the driver case.
It's one of the phases in the wipe or reset or whatever you want to use.
Are there any other updates there, Dean, from the chat?
We've got some more questions, but not around that.
Okay.
I haven't spotted any now.
Okay, so I think, what's the time? We've got 20 minutes left. I'll do a couple more on here. I'll do one more on here and then that last one that was added late in the day. And then I guess we can go off to the quiz at the end. Okay, so let's look at question 14. From Attica. I don't know if Attica's on the call. No, don't see him there. Okay, it says I have an environment of Autopilot hybrid joined with proxy. However, we have an intermittent network issue on InTune connector with event ID 30122. If you can see that one, Michael.
Yep.
And Rudy.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of when looking at that event ID was asking this question. I'm assuming he didn't install the InTune connector on a domain controller, but that's part of troubleshooting, asking questions, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not obvious either if he's actually troubleshooting a real problem or just
looking at the log. Yeah.
Because it would be normal to see messages like this in the log, because the InTune service related to this routinely restarts itself when they're deploying the latest InTune bits to the cloud. So you'll see these when the InTune service goes down, but it doesn't actually cause any problems because the InTune service will come back up. The InTune connector will talk to it again. It will find any pending ODJ blob requests and process them. So the fact that there's a message logged in the event log or in the log files doesn't hurt anything. It's quite normal.
Awesome. Another question from chat, Andy.
Yeah.
Which is from Jad. So 4 PCs with the exact same setup, to the same groups. One of the 4 PCs is not enrolling or auto-deploying. And there are no errors or logs suggesting what the issue might be. What's the best way to prevent this or to determine why that one PC is different? They're brand new out of the box.
I assume he begins the Autopilot enrollment, or is he just on the company page?
Oh. Jad, if you're on mute, you could jump in. Nope.
Because he's telling and not auto-deploying, no errors. But so, yeah. Don't know what you think, Michael, but...
Dad, are you there at all? No. Ask this question.
So which one are we looking at?
It's the one on the screen, if you can see the screen, or it's the one by Jad Guest at 1919 my time, 19 minutes past the hour. Quite far up.
Yeah, no great ideas.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's move on. Thanks for that. There's one here from Will. It says it's number 16 on the list, and it talks about getting wildly different app install times, where they've got 8 required applications, all Win32. Some deployments, everything installed within 20 minutes or first log on sometimes, but it's sometimes hours. Have you seen this one?
It guess it depends again on multiple factors. The Office version he's using, are there any CDN issues that cause delay in the app installations? 8 required apps, but still, what are those apps doing? What steps do they take? What requirements do they have? When I'm looking at the question, I will start with using his tool to determine which app could be causing it.
Which tool is that?
Does the Get Autopilot diagnostic tool, if I'm not mistaken?
Right.
That's the one to determine which app could be the issue. And besides that tool, I will start by looking at the InTune management log with the CM trace tool to determine if you could spot the app what is causing the delay. And again, there are multiple things that can go broken during an enrollment. So it's hard to tell why it is stuck or how to unstuck it without having a look at the logs.
Yeah, and the InTune management extension app install process is very sequentially processing each of the apps. So you'll see it download app 1, install app 1,
app 2.
download app 2, install app 2.
App 2.
So it's useful to follow that along and see where you're stuck.
It will eventually stop at one app.
Yeah, the troubleshooting tool is just reading that information from the registry and displaying.
I have a great question that I've just found. It's so hard to keep up with all these questions, but thank you to everyone who has joined and is putting these into chat, and for everyone who put the questions in the form. Thank you. We are filtering through those and trying to find the ones that are as rich as possible. So apologies if your question doesn't get answered. But this one from Nancy. A Windows Autopilot device gets enrolled and then changes the name of the device twice, once on Azure AD and InTune, and then once on the device itself, it looks like. After the name is changed the second time, it locks the device up, and now you can no longer log into the device with the work ID that it was enrolled with. When I log in with the machine's local account, it wouldn't let me reset Autopilot. It's bricked now. Why would that happen? How would you start to unravel that?
It wouldn't let me reset the Autopilot. Is the reset Autopilot function not working, or is it he isn't enrolling totally anymore with Autopilot? Yeah.
Who is this from? This is someone on the chat, Dean.
Nancy is off mute, so please feel free to ask.
It was working and it started, but then got stuck, wouldn't go ahead, and I just had to stop it, and then I did not have anything to do but to rebuild the machine, so that was my last resort.
So when you say the user can't sign in, what happens when they try?
It wouldn't just let me go inside, like just.
I will start by looking the DSREG CMD output to determine if the device is even enrolled.
Screen was logged and I couldn't just do anything on the screen, so it wouldn't let me in at all.
Yeah. But when you log in with the machine local account,
Yeah.
does that the user regime output tells you anything? I would start by looking at that one, because when you can't log in, I assume something is wrong with the ACID trust connection certificate.
Yeah, the only time I've seen machines end up in odd states like that, it's been when something has rebooted the machine unexpectedly during the process. If the machine's not in a great state when that reboot happens, after the reboot, it's still not in a great state. It may never recover.
I pretty much think the machine was rebooted, because I'm not sure like if InTune or Azure AD would change the name of the machine itself. So to be able to change the name of the machine, it needs a reboot. So I pretty much think it rebooted twice.
Yeah, if you specify a naming template
convention
in the Autopilot profile, you will see a reboot very early in the process to assign that name, generally before the user types in their ID and password. There shouldn't be another rename after that. It might take a while for the objects to notice that the device name has changed, but there should only be a single reboot.
But it so happened that it got enrolled one time with one name, then suddenly it changed the name of the machine. Then I had to unenroll it and then re-enroll, and then it changed the name again, and just, I don't know, just what just happened. So
yeah,
it was super.
It's definitely not normal. Normally it would name the machine. For AAD join, it would name the machine before the user logs in or provides their credentials to do the enrollment and join. So
and
the name is set prior
that's what I
to.
did. Yeah.
It would be different in a hybrid case where the name is established as part of the ODJ reboot, but that sounds like AAD join in this case. But yeah, there should be no reboots or renames after the initial reboot before the user types in their credentials.
Okay.
So something's happening.
But InTune has like that level of device management wherein it can actually change the name of the device itself. Like changing something on InTune is okay, but changing the name of the device?
It is possible to rename a device through InTune. It is possible via a provisioning package. There's lots of ways to change the name of the device. And generally that's never going to cause an issue with AAD. So I don't know that that's the real problem here, but it is certainly a symptom of something odd happening.
I love odd.
Yes, you do. I'm sure we'll see a blog about it soon, Rudy. Just moving on, thank you for that question, Nancy, and thank you for coming off mute to talk through that. We have only a few minutes left. I wanted to just ask the team, Rudy and Michael, do you have a favorite question from the ones that were submitted? I'll give you a few seconds to look through that.
For me, the last one that I received in a private message, but
we can go through that one.
Yeah.
We'll finish on that one. I think it's a good one. Yeah. Nice and simple.
There's a lot of questions in chat. It's very hard to go through them on a Teams window.
School.
Yeah, indeed. There is one while we just wait for you to think of your favorite question. How would you recommend managing WinRE drivers? It's a common issue that vendors do not ship a needed driver in the recovery image. You can patch it, but that's not officially supported apparently.
And there is a process documented for updating the Windows RE image. It's part of a nice, simple 25-step process for updating the Windows image. I mean, literally, it has 25 steps in it, but that's to update the install.wim, the WinRE image, and all of that. Adding an additional driver in as part of that process wouldn't be that hard. it's just kind of a messy thing to have to do. I would harass the OEM personally. Fix that.
Yeah. Okay, did you find a favorite question or not? It could be a question with a yes or no answer. I don't. It doesn't need to be a hard one.
Found plenty of complicated questions.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, we kind of asked for them, though, didn't we? I think that was our fault.
Yeah, it was our fault. And maybe while you're thinking, we'll cover the last question, which you got, I think, Rudy. But this one is where to begin troubleshooting when Autopilot fails you.
Yeah, that's the question I received from someone. He asked me where to begin troubleshooting when you are looking at a failed Autopilot device. But troubleshooting Autopilot is, in my opinion, not about troubleshooting Autopilot itself. Just like Michael also told, you've got InTune, you've got Azure ID, the ESP. So it's hard to determine where to start troubleshooting, because first you need to look at what's part of the Autopilot process you are troubleshooting. Are you troubleshooting Windows, the hardware, just like the TPM attestation issues with pre-provisioning? Where to begin? Because if you ask me, there are a lot of parts that create the Autopilot process. So first determine which one you are troubleshooting, and also those parts can also be divided, just like the ESP. You got an ESP. Where to begin troubleshooting the ESP at which step does the ESP fails you? Does it fails you at the preparing step, the device step? And you can, I've got our own Excel sheet for myself. Okay, it's that step, so that step I should take. I need to open Fiddler, I need to open Procmon, I need to open perform a event tracing, combine that information to determine what's going on. But that's to answer that question in 4 minutes. That's going to be a hell of a job, I guess. But maybe Michael has some nice additions to it.
Sorry, I was battling an old school telephone that was
oh, that's right. It was your phone.
Me. Yes.
But
so I didn't hear the question.
Yeah. Where to start troubleshooting Autopilot?
Where to start?
That's a nice one, a big one.
Yeah.
And I was telling that it was which part is it? InTune, is it the ESP? Is it an Azure AD issue? Is it a Windows issue? Is it a hardware issue? Or is Microsoft falling apart at that time?
I can tell you where not to start.
That's good.
Don't start with a Google search and take the first link. So many times people will get sidetracked on issues that aren't really issues. So it's good to start off with an understanding of what normal looks like. So as you're going through a user-driven AAD join process, what does it look like? What are the steps that it goes through? And where does your problematic scenario vary from that process? Same with hybrid Azure AD join or self-deploying or pre-provisioning. What's it supposed to look like? Find a video, a walkthrough, something like that, and go through the steps, and then compare that against where you are running into an issue, because that'll narrow it down. Just saying that it doesn't work doesn't really help troubleshoot. So you have to understand how far you got into the process, and that gives you clues as far as where to go next. If you are getting enrolled in InTune and joined to AAD, obviously you don't need to troubleshoot that. You can then focus on what policies are being sent from InTune and what is the ESP tracking and those sorts of things. So the typical troubleshooting tips for ESP then apply. But if you're getting a failure on enrollment or something like that, then you're going to do something completely different.
Also, there's no shame in in promoting your blog, Michael. Didn't you say? I'm sure at one point you've said that you can find out when an InTune feature or Azure AD feature is broken by the number of people searching for a particular post that hits on your blog. Is that
yeah, that's for kind of a very specific failure. Like if everything is working and it suddenly stops and you start seeing an OOBE AAD v2 error message. I mean, that's pretty much all it says on the screen is OOBE AAD v2. That's a pretty obvious one that it's not your fault. There's probably something wrong on the Microsoft side. So look for outages either through the message center or Twitter or other social networks where other people are probably complaining about the same thing.
Starting to look on Twitter, I guess that's the most useful advice indeed. Just open Twitter, and most of the time, a lot of people are tagging the InTune support team, asking why they are receiving that kind of error message on the screen.
Okay, I think we are at time. Andy, we were about to say the same thing.
I was just going to say, yeah, we've come to the end. You know, Michael and Rudy, thanks so much for answering these. You've been put on the spot. You know, you've got a lot of knowledge in this area, and I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call that appreciate it. Thank you so much for attending. Hopefully you found this very useful. We will lead on to the I think we're still going to do the quiz at the end here. Yeah, we're still.
I don't say why not. Yeah, we'll get some money for charity and someone.
Yeah, we're still going to do the quiz. So please hang on and take part. And the last thing to say for me is, you know, Merry Christmas to everyone. Oh, and one last thing, as Dean has mentioned, this is for charity. So if you do have a few pennies left in your pocket and can spare a few pennies for the charity, please go ahead and do that. It's for a great cause. That's it from me, but thanks very much to Rudy and to Michael. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Okay, Lexi, do you have a few words? Did you want to close that?
Yeah, so again, like we're all saying, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to go ahead and put the link to our YouTube channel in the little chat right now, so that if you want to see this from the beginning or you missed, you want to fast forward or reference this, that video will be there, as well as our previous Autopilot AMA, which also would have some helpful information for you, and all the other content that we work really hard to bring you guys. So I'll put that in the chat right now so you guys can go check that out.
Thanks, Lexi. Good. So as I say, everyone's welcome to start the quiz, jump in. We have 30 or so people joining. It's on the screen. Please just head to menti.com, enter in that code. You can do that on your mobile device or on your web browser. And yeah, we'll give it a few moments, but this is just for fun. Any errors and omissions on this quiz are not the responsibility of anyone on this team. If the answer's wrong, my bad. Whatever the answer says is the one that we're going to go with. What else can I say about it? Yeah, it's £50 or equivalent, whichever country you're from, Amazon or any equivalent store that we can get a remote voucher for you, and also £50 to the charity. Everyone, a few seconds to join. Still, maybe a couple. Also, these questions are mostly around Autopilot. Some of them are a little bit security, some are a little bit random. And whilst this is the Festive Tech Calendar, I wasn't feeling very festive when I wrote the quiz, so we didn't have any festive questions in there. You'll have to stick with Andy and Radu's jumpers as the only festive thing on this channel right now.
Oh, you did notice then.
Yeah. Ben, sadly, no. These aren't going to help you with certification at all. I wouldn't. I mean, no, almost certainly not. Shane, unable to join. Try the phone and PC. Try an in-private browser. We've got 60 people. I'm not trying to say it's just you, but try an in-private browser. I'll give you a few more seconds to join. You can also join while the quiz is running as well. Actually, you just lose the opportunity to have answered the ones that have already gone. Give us a couple more minutes. And Michael and Rudy, you don't have to stick around if you don't want to. You're welcome to, but if you are busy, you're welcome to head off. I appreciate you spending so much time with us. Another one saying they can't join. Yeah, if you're struggling to join, please use an in-private browser if you can. Try your phone with an in-private browser. We've got 78, 79, 80 people on now. So whilst this is a troubleshooting session, I'm going to struggle with that one. Oh yeah, it's just a page with a heart button. Yeah, that's fine. That's all you get, just a page with a heart button. Sorry, I should have said that. In a few moments when I click go, then you'll be able to answer some questions. Sorry, the quiz will be live. Sorry, Shane. Sorry, it's not working. We've had really good success with this. We've only got 65 people in the meeting.
I know,
but 87 in the 87. I fear people are joining from YouTube, and this is going to be interesting for them. Okay, let's start. Right. How do we go on this? There's everyone. Look at all them. Okay, I'm going to start the countdown. So it's fastest finger first. Answer fast to get more points. What does RBAC stand for? I might read through them. Is it really basic admin control, role-based access control, role-based admin control, or role-based Azure control? 3, 2, 1. Good, well done. To the 46 who got that right. Question 2. Which method cannot be used to deploy Defender for Endpoint on Linux? I am worried about this question. That's a good spread. I believe it's InTune. If anyone has any other opinions, please let me know, but it's standing. Question 3. Which tool protects identities in the most comprehensive way, in my opinion? Is that single sign-on, conditional access, or multi-factor authentication? Ooh, split opinion. Okay, I've gone with conditional access. You can obviously leverage MFA with conditional access. Yeah. Question 4. What is MISA in relation to Microsoft? Is it the Microsoft Integrated Security Alliance, the Microsoft Infrastructure Security Analysts, the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, or the Microsoft Intelligent Security Alliance? Thank you, Michael. Good answer. It is the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association. And I take the point that I was wrong on the last question. Maybe conditional access is not right. Autopilot requires devices to be Azure AD joined or hybrid Azure AD joined. True or false? really chosen the wrong time to be doing tricky questions with Michael and Rudy staring at me. Is everyone happy with that answer? Okay, good. Linda's just mentioned in chat that they're struggling to enter a name because the questions advance so quickly. Is that me pressing go, or I'm not sure. If I do that, and then maybe you get a chance to enter a name, Linda. Apologies if I've been pressing enter too soon. Hopefully you've typed a name now. Let's go. Which of these is not part of the zero trust model? Assume breach, use least privileged access, verify explicitly, or require MFA. Wow, that was a good spread. I've chosen require MFA, and hopefully that's right. The other three are almost certainly part of the zero trust model that I'm aware of. Question 7. Halfway through. Which 3 core features make up Windows Autopilot? Choose 3. You could only choose one. My bad. Hopefully you chose one of the ones that right. My bad. That is possibly a quirk of Mentimeter that I forgot about. I'll take that as well. Sorry. But hopefully you chose one that was right, and there you go. Those 3 questions were right. 3 answers were right. Windows Autopilot supports InTune only, and no other MDM can use Autopilot. True or false? Really worried about this one as well. False. I believe other MDMs can use Autopilot. Any thoughts from the team?
Definitely others work. I even wrote my own once.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Validation. So next. Autopilot requires an internet connection. I'm going to assume it's true or false. True or false? If that's Michael with false or Rudy with false, then I'm going to cry.
I was going to tell it depends, but
Okay. So some of these questions, I think maybe this one or the one coming up, will require you to type an answer. It might be this one, it might be the one after this, just so you're aware. It's not just a button press. It might need you to press to type in an actual answer. InTune Config Manager co-management requires on-premises Active Directory. True or false? (50-50) split. I believe the answer is false in that you don't need on-prem AD for either of those.
Can you see the leaderboard at all, Dean? Or
I cannot, and I don't think I put it in just to keep this a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. This is everyone can see their own leaderboard and see where they are when they answer a question, though. I think. Couple of questions to go. Windows Autopilot supports macOS, Linux, Android, and iOS/iPadOS. True or false? My camera's died. False, correct. Windows Autopilot is just really Windows. I believe, I hope.
Oh, we missed something.
Yeah. Obviously, there are other ways to silently and automatically deploy those other operating systems. It's just not called Windows Autopilot. Michael's blog is called OOF Hours. What did OOF originally stand for? This is a typing question. Hope I get this right, because I didn't actually ask Michael. As I said, none of these questions have been seen by anyone on the team apart from Lexi.
I'm not even sure I'll get this one right.
I'm wondering the same.
That's quite worrying.
Get a long time to write the answer. Some have it right. Out of facility. We have one person got it right. Out of facility. Well done, whoever that was. Was that Michael? Maybe it was. Okay, next. Oh, and I think that goes back to way before out of office was a thing, and it was really out of facility that was used as the rather than OO, I think it is now. Next. Which of these is not a prerequisite for Autopilot? Company branding, Azure AD Premium, device password, and device registered to the organization. And I'm kind of worried about this question too. Rudy, Michael, any thoughts on this one?
Company branding, that's one. Azure AD Premium is 2. And the device registered to the organization is 3. So that's leaves the device password. So not sure what you mean with the device password, but
yeah, it was just good.
I think the company branding requirement was actually removed at some point. It'll work without it, but the docs still say it's required.
Yeah, I thought so too. But as you say, the doc said it was required. Yeah. But hey, that's the answers we give. So there you go. Next, second to last one. All correct answers give max points. What was the first Windows 10 version in the format YYMM? Got a lot of time to answer this question. It's a typing question. Hopefully it's just 4 digits. A lot of 1507, 1511. The answer is 1507, according to Wikipedia. It wasn't originally called 1507, but it was renamed 1507 when Microsoft realized that they were going to start doing that naming convention, I believe, according to Wikipedia. So, final question. Windows Autopilot is the only way to enroll devices into InTune. Yes or no? And of course it's no. It's It's no. Good. Okay, so hopefully we have a leaderboard on the next slide, and we see who wins. Funnily enough, Michael won. Congratulations, Michael. A recount. Yeah. Okay, so
I missed several of them. How did I win?
Yeah, well done. So Michael obviously will give you the £50 admin gift voucher, and we'll also do the second place as well. So Nicholas Holgren, is that? Hopefully you're in chat. Hopefully you're not somewhere, you haven't just disappeared when you saw that Michael won. If you are around, please let me know your email address. You can find me on Twitter or wherever, really. Nicholas?
I am in chat, yeah.
Very good, very good. Just stick around and let me know your email address so I can definitely get that to you. Michael, I've got you on. I've got your email as well, so I can send that to you. Thank you for everyone who took part. That is actually quite a close leaderboard as well, to be honest. So thank you for everyone for sharing the knowledge and joining in with the quiz. We'll also donate £50 to the Festive Tech Calendar charity Missing People. And that's it from this session. So thank you everyone for your time. Hopefully you enjoyed.
Very much.